Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. My name is Michael Hilkemeyer, and I'm absolutely privileged to and honored to bring you again Kate Highfield, who is currently still working at ACU, but has now told me she's just started a new role.
Love it, don't you? You've got to love a new role, Michael.
Yes.
Friends, it's lovely to see you again. As of this week, I'm the Deputy Head of School for the ACT and Regional New South Wales region, which is pretty exciting. I love working with initial teacher education, Michael. It's such an important part of our lives. And, you know, we're doing some great things at ACU. So it's pretty fun to be part of that team.
Well, it's a pleasure and a privilege to have you, Kate. So thank you once again for this opportunity.
So, Michael, last time we chatted, we talked a lot about STEM. And in particular, we talked about simple robotics, I think, from memory. Is that about right?
That's correct. Yes, we did.
Fantastic. Michael, can we take that conversation a little bit further tonight and have a chat about simple robotics, apps, tech, tasks, and how they interweave with these ideas of motivation, engagement, resilience. So kind of using STEM to tie these ideas together.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, I would love that. I would love that, Kate. That'd be great. Go for it.
Fabulous. Let's get going then. My friends, so often we think of STEM as something scary. We think science, tech, engineering, mathematics, scary. And we often think through these ideas as being a negative. Perhaps we've had a negative experience at school, or we're thinking formulas, where for me, these ideas are ways of thinking. They are ways that we can investigate, reason, problem solve, and particularly they are ways that we can look at building children's capacities and building children's resilience. I have a 4-year-old. Thankfully, she's hopefully she's asleep because we're recording this one at night. Friends, when I look at my 4-year-old's life, so much of her world is, oh, you've done such a good job at that. And I wonder about how often we give children the chance to fail. Not to fail in a negative way, but to fail and then recover. Because when we fail and we recover, we have an opportunity to build new neurological connections. We have an opportunity to build resilience. We have an opportunity to find new ways of doing things, to problem solve. And that's what I sort of really think we need to look at, is some opportunities for using STEM in that way. That was a very long-winded introduction, but I'm hoping it's okay, Michael. I might just share my screen and get going. So friends, what we're looking at here is this idea of motivation, engagement, resilience, and how they all fit together with STEM. STEM, STEAM, whether you're thinking about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or thinking about STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, what we're really looking at today, at least, is this intersection of tasks, apps, and robotics, how they fit together. How do different things afford different opportunities for our young learners? And I'm particularly interested in children under the age of 8. And I would be advocating that you can do this from 2 or 3 onwards. So friends, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at children who are engaging naturally in STEM concepts. And this is my daughter, the bike rider on the front. She is trying valiantly to pull 2 of her friends as she rides about. But just wait, didn't work. They need a friend. So we've got instantly a problem-solving opportunity happening here. And then off they go, success. Yes, they're off the path. Yep, she's got great driving, my daughter. I can't wait till she's learning to drive. So here she is again, this time in block building. This is her block family. But when you look closely at that block family, I'm hoping you're starting to see the beginnings of engineering, where you've got to have your blocks on a sound foundation in order to be able to balance the next block over on top. And you can see here, she's got those beautiful conical shaped blocks, and she's balanced mostly circles on top. She's worked out at the age of around 3 that you need to have the circle positioned in the center of the conical block for it to balance. Otherwise it falls off. And then if you look down here a little more closely, hopefully you can spot that she is using that block to then balance another smaller cone on top. Let's move on. So that was when she was, that was January last year. So 3 and a bit. We move on to the end of last year, and the block structures are becoming more detailed. The understanding of physics, the understanding of gravity, not that she'd call it physics or gravity, the understanding of balance, and of course, engineering is coming into play. She went through a stage at this time where everything had to be symmetrical. She was really interested in symmetry. So of course, we're starting to see the mathematics component coming in as well. Teachers who worked alongside her would talk about size, shape, measurement, and of course, we're seeing STEM. In all of these examples, we're seeing STEM through play, a very non-tech way to view STEM. Here is a photo from a few weeks ago, and we're seeing that STEM evolving a lot more. Here, we're starting to see STEM evolving into collaborative block constructions, which is great to see. I do so love that. And Jemima and 2 of her friends worked together to create this spider, where you can see the legs balancing in that space. A lot more advancement if you think about the engineering in this space. You see, when we talk about STEM, it doesn't have to be tech, but there is some power when we use the tech. And in these examples, when Jemima saw what I was doing today, she loved to see the progression. And she was excited to use that as a window into her thinking. She was able to recall the photo of the family, the photo of the block tower, and of course, the spider from very recently. What fascinates me about that is that these block photos are over a year old, and yet she could still recall what was going on and recall some of the language that happens. The photo became a joint point of attention that allowed us to sustain and talk about what she was thinking about. So STEM play with an overlay of tech, in this case, digital documentation, taking photos in her service, enabled these types of thinking. When we start to bring in this tech idea, it gives us new opportunities. Now, that's not to say that wasn't possible 20 years ago, but for me, the tech in this space gives that opportunity for reflection, for revisiting, for adding language, for building in those stories. And it gives us a chance to re-look at that. She's recently developed the concept, the word for symmetry. Before that, she'd say it just matched on both sides. When she looked at those block photos, one of the first things she said was, "Oh, Mum, it's symmetry." Not quite symmetrical. We'll work on that language a bit later. But what I love there is that the tech is affording a new opportunity and affording an opportunity to build. Now, I hate it when people just talk about their children as researchers, because I keep thinking, hang on, that's a sample size of 1, 3 or 5. It's not just one child, but of course I'm using her as an example because I've got permission to engage in her with her documentation and permission to share that. So friends, as we think about tech, I bring us back to Early Childhood Australia's position statement on young children in digital technologies. I had the honour of working with ECA as part of the committee on this, obviously written by Leon Straker and Susie Edwards. And what I love about this is we reviewed the documents and as we thought through what was included here, these documents are so beautifully based in research, which is, of course, what we need to be doing in our practice. In particular, there are 4 areas that the document draws out. Using tech to promote and build relationships, using tech to make sure that children are having an understanding of citizenship, using tech to build notions of health and well-being, and of course, using tech in play and pedagogy. So for me, when we start to look at using tech in these ways, we need to be looking at the whole child, not just an app that teaches letters and sounds or an app that teaches numbers, although for some children that can be what we need. Instead, we need to be looking holistically. So that could be creating a digital book of block play over the course of a year. And of course, for those of you who have worked with me before, you know I'll be recommending Book Creator for that. Perhaps that could be using tech to support relationships over distance or remind children of how they've worked collaboratively to drive the bike along the path. It is also about using tech in a way that builds children's understanding of citizenship. So me talking to Jemima about the photos today was asking her permission to share them tonight. You see, I want her to understand this concept of citizenship and ownership, and that she has rights in this space, in this digital space. She is allowed to say, no, Mum, don't show that photo. We talked about the fact that her friends on the bike's faces couldn't be seen. And she said, that's okay, Mum, we don't have to ask them to show the photos because you can't tell who it is. She is understanding citizenship at a very young age, and that's important. Of course, we also need to be looking at tech that promotes health and well-being, and that's both physical health and mental well-being. That's what we're going to tap into tonight. And of course, using tech in a way that builds and enhances play and pedagogy in a really respectful way. So for me, when we're looking at tech in this space, really we're looking for Goldilocks. We're looking for the not too easy, not too hard, just right. And so often when we go into an app, we end up looking for resources that are challenging. So I'm going to do another share here, a share this time from my iPad, to have a look at some of the apps that are in this space. So, oh, wrong share, try again. You've got to love a Zoom update, don't you? So this time, friends, I'm going to use AirPlay to share my iPad with you, which is a nice piece. AirPlay gives us this chance to seamlessly connect devices, hopefully. That's the idea at least, isn't it? If not, we'll grab a cable and plug it in. Here we go. So this time round, we're starting to look at some of the apps that we can use to enhance STEM. I'm going to show you this particular app. This app, I should quickly show you, is called Code Cards. I believe it originally came out of Adoki as one of the app designers, Code Cards. I'm playing the free version, friends. And the reason I'm playing the free version is that I want to show you this leveled system. There you go. If I want to buy the full thing, I have to unlock the game. This is an interesting one to me because if I'm talking about Goldilocks effect, that I need to find the not too hard, not too easy, just right, when I've got something that's pre-leveled, it's hard for me to tap in at just the right space. It might be that I'm tapping in a way that's too easy, or it might be that I'm tapping in a way that's too hard. So this particular one, I've already learnt through level 1 and 2 that I need to start my car. And then, of course, I need to plan my journey. So in this journey, I'd like to go forward. That's the purple key. And then I'm going to need to do a turn. And look, they're even helping me by highlighting the turn I need to do. So I can pop this in here. Now, friends, because I am telling the car what to do and executing a program, I am programming, I am coding. And my coding here, because the app is telling me my task, I have to make it not too easy, not too hard, just right. So as a teacher, you have to know your children, know where they're at, and you have to have a great trust in the app, that the app is going to go up through a sequential leveling that will align with your children's needs. I better press play so you understand what goes on. I've achieved my goal. We'll play one more level, and then come back to this idea of the Goldilocks effect. Oh gosh, this is getting more complicated. I better start with the purple because I know that helps me go forward. Then I need to turn up. I better try the up result. And then I'll need to turn to the right. Now, what's interesting here is that they're just using coloured arrows, which is fine, but I'm not perhaps learning language like turn right, turn left, rotate at 90 degrees. I'm also only able in this version of the program to play the way the app wants me to play. The app is deciding what my task is. The app is deciding my goal, which might not be a bad thing, but it's something to really ponder. Oh, good. I'm being rewarded for getting it right. Oh, fantastic. I'm not sure if you heard the sound effects, but I'm sure you heard the finish point. Now, the interesting thing for me there, Michael, is that as a learner, I'm not getting a chance to decide what I'm doing. As a learner, I'm just being told what to do. The app is deciding it for me. Is that making sense?
It is, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you could hit that Goldilocks effect with the app. You might get that spot where you're hitting not too hard, not too easy, just right. That's possible. And indeed, some of the more open-ended apps give you that chance because, of course, the children are able to choose where they're at. And many of the newer apps are actually skipping steps and levels for us if they're detecting that the child has already grasped that concept. Those apps that integrate artificial intelligence have some really interesting affordances for us in terms of sequential learning. The challenge here, though, in STEM is that not all children will have the same experience, understand the notation, understand what's going on. And so sometimes when we're looking at STEM in an app-based play, the predetermined levels might be too hard or they might be too easy, which makes this a little challenging for us. So last time we met, we talked about all these programmable toys. We talked a little bit about some of the simple programmable toys and some of the more complex tools that are available on the market. We took sort of a bit of a historical perspective in some way of all of these different robotic options. And what fascinates me about this is that because children perceive these to be a toy, and I do call them programmable toys, what happens is that they play the way they'd like to play. So whether that's playing with Lego Duplo for a 3 or 4-year-old, or perhaps playing with a Codapillar, the child becomes in charge of their journey. Now, Codapillar comes with a Caterpillar head Fisher-Price toy, not expensive. And then you can connect those parts on the back. Those parts go through a rotation, 90 degrees forward, play music, lights come on, etc. But depending on which parts of the caterpillar body you've attached, it changes the code and the movement of the Codapillar through space. What fascinates me here is that because children are directing their play, they are able to create their task goals. And so they are able to hit that Goldilocks effect every time. So I think last time we looked a little bit at Ozobots, that we could draw a line and follow them around. And of course, Bluebots, which are one of my favorites. I particularly love Bluebots because of the clear box technology and that you can start to think about what might be inside. For me, part of the technology piece is that we need to help children understand what they're doing and how they're doing it and how they're working. The closed box tools, the black box technologies such as computers and phones, often are really confusing for children because as they understand how they work, it's really hard to see how it works, which is, of course, where this whole idea of STEM and coding comes in, because we're able to start to have an understanding of what this looks like. So, friends, for me, one of the pieces that we're talking about here is this idea of resilience. Now, if I'm playing a pre-made app on an iPad that rewards me for getting it right, I'm perhaps having less opportunity to build resilience. I might be building resilience if I get it wrong and I need to have another go, or I might not. So if it's okay with you, Michael, I want to take a bit of a trip into some research to talk about what we mean by resilience, and then come back to, well, how does robotics afford this? How does robotics, and particularly robotic toys, allow children to engage in that space? So guys, this is an open access article, and I've chosen this particular commentary because I want you to be able to access it. So if you're at a university, you can access it. If you're at home, you can access it. If you're on a bus, you can access it. This is an open access article, and that's important. So often as academics, we write things and then they get stuck in a journal or stuck in a library, and you can't necessarily access it as a teacher. So friends, this article by Mayston and Barnes, and I apologise if I'm mispronouncing their names, is on resilience in children from a developmental perspective. So not from a thinking perspective, but from a whole child development perspective. It is a free and open source article, and it was published in 2018, so relatively recent. They go through a whole heap of factors around resilience and what a developmental perspective on resilience would be. They talk about the challenges and some of these core questions addressed by studies in resilience. It's a really lovely review of what resilience looks like. In particular, I appreciate the fact that they've reminded us of the challenges and the risks that children experience in terms of building resilience. So risks such as trauma, neglect, adverse childhood experiences, poverty, natural disaster, and war. These are all risks around resilience. We also see that there's these opportunities for adaptive success. So those are developmental tasks, mental health, physical health, happiness, work achievement, and caregiving. And that's the section that we need to focus in on here. And then, of course, there are processes that support success or resilience. They're promotive or protective factors, the neurobiological, the behavioural, the familial, the relational, the community, the cultural, and the societal. And what's fascinating to me is that when we introduce tech into children's lives, we have this cultural, societal piece that might promote resilience or might not. Now, friends, if you're thinking, why is Kate talking about someone else's research? It's important that we reflect on other research. And this, of course, comes from Mayston and Barnes, and how this impacts on us. So the next two slides are from this article. If you're interested, Google it. So what's interesting for me is that these criteria for success, these criteria to adapt and become resilient, are where we can help children. So that's creating tasks or providing opportunities for children to create tasks where they're developmentally appropriate. They're at a developmental level that is the Goldilocks effect, not too hard, not too easy, just right. That's where we focus on mental health. We talk about mental health. Oh, that didn't feel good to get it wrong. Let's try it again and see if it feels good to get it right. Where we're talking about emotions, we're starting to label our emotions and explain those feelings. And of course, where we're feeling achievement and noticing achievement. The Australian Association of Mathematics Teachers in Early Childhood Australia talks about recognising, celebrating and building mathematical knowledge. And this is what we're talking about in STEM. Recognising when a child is working in a STEM-based way, celebrating it and building upon it. The other piece of this article that I think is really important for us to look at is this short list of common resilience factors in children's development. And I really wanted to touch in on this, the third and fourth and fifth point here, that when we're talking about resilience, we're talking about skilled parenting or skilled educators. We're talking about giving children the chance to have agency and motivation to adapt, giving them chances where they have to actively cope and build mastery. And of course, skills in problem solving, planning and executive function. So that's collaborative problem solving. That's the working with a friend to build a spider with blocks, or working with a friend to make a robotic toy move through the space. What I love about this is that we've got decades of research that are telling us that STEM can promote well-being, especially when children are building that self-efficacy and that positive view of the self, their positive view of their identity. We know from the research that children who are resilient are children who are happy to try again, to have another go. And this is where it's exciting with technology that's open-ended, especially robotic toys, because when children can generate a task and then make a plan to solve their task, we see some really rich thinking. This, of course, also links into motivation theory, and it links into Martin's view of motivation and engagement. I was working with first-year teachers on exactly this concept today, where that self-efficacy, mastery orientation, and valuing of learning, that persistence and planning are helping us build skills in motivation. Now, Martin's work is obviously with adults, but what we're building in this space is a really nice piece around motivation and engagement. What we're also doing is giving children this chance to link resilience and critical thinking and creativity. We're giving children that opportunity through robotics, through coding, to engage in this space. That's a big C, creativity, and a little c, creativity, and of course, a few more C's, context and critical thinking. So big C, creativity, is those big ideas. It's Dyson inventing a vacuum cleaner that changes the way we vacuum, or for the ladies out there, Dyson inventing a hair wrap that changes the way you style your hair. I clearly didn't do that today. Those are amazing ideas. They're brilliant. It's the Apple Watch. It's the plane flying in the sky. That's a big C, creativity. But for us with children, we're looking for the little C's. These are the aha moments where we go, oh, wow, I did it. And those are the moments we need to be celebrating, whether it's putting a circular hat on a cone-shaped block and having it balance, or finding a friend to help us push a bike with 3 people on it. It's those little aha moments. We're also saying that play and creativity and context are interwoven, that as teachers, we have to find those contexts that promote play, promote creativity, and that really help children to see themselves engaging in this. That it's not just us saying, do robotics, but it's us creating a context where it's safe to do robotics and make a mistake and then have another go, where it's safe to ask a friend to come and help us out. What we're really focusing in is on educational models that really awaken critical thinking, that allow us to look at attitudes, emotion, and expression of feelings, that give us this opportunity to reflect, see if it worked, interpret, and then re-engage. These opportunities to think critically, these opportunities to revise our thinking are what we're promoting. So, Michael, last time we chatted, we talked about robotic toys, and I'd like to go back to that space, if it's okay with you.
I'd love that, Kate.
I'm not sure how we're going for time. So I'd like to go back to this idea of robotic toys and look at how robotic toys give us this opportunity to build resilience, why we need these tasks and what these tasks look like to facilitate these moments of resilience. So I'm going to go back to some older research of mine, and hopefully you'll be able to start to see some of the thinking that is going on here. So I'll reshare my screen. Michael, do you have many viewers who are joining you from prior to school settings, or are most of them joining you from school spaces? Or a bit of a mixture?
A mix of both, I think. Yes.
Beautiful. So friends, this is a prior to school context. This is a beautiful service with incredible teachers. A prior to school context in Australia are, of course, our preschools, our long day care centres, our family daycares, etc., and sometimes our transition classes. These are the birth to 5 contexts. In this particular study, the children were using BBots and BlueBots and experimenting with what do the buttons do. They then very quickly looked at other robotic toys such as Probots and engaged in this incredible experimentation. What angle can a Probot go up? How steep can a hill be for a Probot to move? Now, I'm not recommending Probots at all. As I said, this is an older study. But what I love is that when children are generating the problems, when we as teachers say, what would you like to find out? We open up new opportunities for investigation. Now, the children initially hypothesized that the robot wouldn't go up the ramp because there was bark dust on the ramp. They thought that it was about the surface. They then repositioned after many, many attempts, they worked out that actually it was the steepness of the ramp that inhibited the toy's ability to move up. Now, what fascinates me, and I know Kristen wouldn't mind, it was that the children here weren't actually meant to be exploring ramps outside. They were meant to be doing a whole other project. When we let children choose the tasks, when we let children take things further, sometimes they surprise us and give us this amazing opportunity to go further. In this example, children started to build roads, and this is just using MDF, lightweight cardboard. And we were deliberately problematizing the roads because we wanted the children to experiment with angles. So you can see there that there's some angled pieces. So this is an example of where when children and teachers work together, we knew that the children were able to program the toys to move at 90 degrees. We deliberately wanted to throw in that challenge of, can you make a different angle? Can it move that way? No one mentioned the word angles. We just threw in these extra sheets of road to problematize it. Here's another example, this time round 3-year-olds who decorated their bots and were moving their bots from a simple start point just forward and counting how many steps they had to go. Now, what's fascinating is that as teachers, we started with that simple task of how many steps to move. The children changed the game. They wanted to go and visit each other's houses. I love that when we add that creativity in, sometimes we can find out more. Of course, when they visited each other's houses, visited each other's faces, that made it a lot more complicated in terms of programming. But what happens is that when the child is at the center of the task, when the child is motivated to move through that task, failure doesn't feel like failure anymore. Failure feels like another chance to have a go. When tasks are play-based rather than driven and sequential, we open up new forms of thinking. This is another example, and this time the children were exploring how to move their robotics on a road. And you can see on the road there, they're starting to experimenting with mark making to write down their program. So there's a line there that meant forward, and then there are a series of small lines crossing over the top that indicated how many steps you needed to complete that road. Now, in a school context, so often we have to focus in on specific curriculum outcomes, but we can still engage in playful thinking in this space. So that can be, can we make a robot move around a chair through a tunnel? Can we make a robot do a slalom ride around those hats? Can we integrate the technologies that are available on screen and become giant robots outside? You can see there's a lot of playful learning going on here. Can we create maps and can we create worlds? Now, what fascinates me here, Michael, is that so often as teachers, we think, oh, right, I need to teach this outcome. But in fact, sometimes what we need to do is give children the chance to take the lead and to give children the chance to do that big C creativity and the little c creativity, to give children the chance to have some of those opportunities to overcome and, of course, to build resilience. There's so many things we could keep talking about, Michael.
Absolutely, Kay, absolutely. And I totally agree. Like, you know, as teachers, I think all we need to do really in terms of this is to be able to maybe like guide, children to take the right steps, because they are naturally creative and curious. And so just a little bit of guidance and help and whatsoever to help them go in the right direction, to test their boundaries and to go further and progress in the learning is so important.
It is so important, isn't it? I'm a huge fan of asking the question, tell me, what are you thinking? What are you working on? I'm a huge fan of taking the photo and then saying to the child, wow, I took this photo. What were you thinking about? What were you planning? Did you have a goal? That embedded multi-layered use of technology, the photo that allows the child to revisit, gives us that chance to articulate the goal and then gives us a chance to feed back into the goal. So when the children started experimenting with a ramp, the teacher went, oh, we could play with roads. Then we could start embedding and enhancing. When we give children agency, but at the same time support, and we saw that with the little girls and the grid that they were using, they needed the support to know how many steps. When we gave them the agency and the support, that's where that learning comes into play. So I love to ask children, what's your goal? And then what steps do you think you might need to get there? And if we can do that more, we're doing an amazing thing. I also think it's about preempting failure, allowing failure, asking children, when did you get it wrong today? Hey, who made a mistake today? Celebrating the fact that we don't always get it right. Someone told me something very recently, and I need a prop for this one.
Well, that's like what you're talking about there is in fact just play, isn't it? Learning without failure. And it's just about asking those open-ended questions. What would happen if you did press this button? What do you think about this? I did it this way. What do you, would you like to give that a try?
Is there another way of solving it?
Yes.
You see, as adults, I can open this jar easily. As a child, I have to learn that. How often do we show that we don't know? How often do we show, oh, I'm not sure what happens there? How often do we co-learn? Or how often do we have to overcome a problem? This example of, I'm not sure how I can get that jar open, it's not opening. It helps a child see that we don't always get it right. Yep. It helps a child see that we sometimes have to try again. And it's not just about a jar opening. It's about using an app. It's about understanding the robotic toy. It's about ourselves saying, I'm not sure. Let's work it out together.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Friends, if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to chat. Michael's got my details. You can pass them on. But I hope that you'll start thinking STEM, problem solving, iteration, come back, revisit it, think together. Hopefully that gives you something to ponder.
Okay, you've given such another fantastic presentation, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity, giving us this opportunity to learn more from you and how we can improve in our learning environment with the use of technology with young children today. So thank you so much for today's presentation.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for thinking with me, Michael.